The ancient Japanese habit. Your brain is starving for you woke up this morning already behind. Before your eyes fully opened, your brain had already started its list. Emails, deadlines, things you forgot to do yesterday, things you need to do today. And somewhere between the alarm and the first cup of coffee, you lost something without even noticing it was gone. The Japanese have a word for what you lost. They have had a word for it for over 1,000 years. It is called ma, and your brain is starving for it. Ma does not translate cleanly into English. Most people try. They call it negative space. They call it pause. They call it silence. But none of those words capture what ma actually is. Ma is not the absence of something. It is the presence of everything that the pause makes possible. It is the breath between the notes that makes the music what it is. It is the space between words that gives language its meaning. It is the moment between stimulus and response that makes you human rather than just reactive. For centuries, Japanese culture built ma into almost every aspect of daily life. It was designed into gardens deliberately left incomplete. It was woven into the architecture of tea houses, where a low doorway forced you to bow before entering, to slow down, to shift your mind before your body crossed the threshold. It was embedded into the ritual of the tea ceremony itself, where a single cup of tea might take 40 minutes to prepare and receive, not because the tea demanded it, but because your brain did. Cognitive neuroscientist Marcus Reichel at Washington University discovered what happens inside your brain when you stop giving it tasks to complete. He identified a network of regions that activate not when you are focused on something, but when you are not. He called it the default mode network. And what he found surprised almost everyone. When your brain appears to be doing nothing, it is actually running one of its most sophisticated processes. It is consolidating memory. It is making unexpected connections between ideas. It is processing emotion. It is constructing your sense of self. It is doing, in other words, everything that makes you capable of insight, creativity, and wisdom. But here is what Reichel also found. This network only activates when your brain is allowed to wander, when there is nothing demanding your attention. When there is ma, you are living in a world that has declared war on that state. Every spare second is now filled. You scroll while you wait. You listen to something while you walk. You check your phone while the coffee brews. The tiny natural pauses that used to exist inside an ordinary day, the 2 minutes in a waiting room, the 3 minutes between meetings, the quiet stretch of a commute, have all been colonized. And your default mode network, starved of its activation window, has gone quiet. Not because it is broken, because you never give it room. The effects of this are not subtle. Psychologist Jonathan Schooler at the University of California, Santa Barbara has spent years studying what he calls the incubation effect. When people step away from a problem they cannot solve, something remarkable happens. The brain continues working on the problem without conscious instruction. And when people return to it after a walk, after sleep, after a period of deliberately unfocused attention, they solve it at dramatically higher rates than those who kept pushing. The insight does not come from more effort. It comes from the pause. This is exactly what the Japanese understood, not as a productivity hack, not as a wellness trend, as a philosophy of how a human life should be structured. The Japanese art of forest bathing, Shinrin-yoku, is not hiking. It is not exercise. It is the practice of moving slowly through trees with no destination and no goal. Research led by immunologist Ching Li at Nippon Medical School found that 2 hours of Shinrin-yoku measurably reduced cortisol levels, lowered blood pressure, and increased natural killer cell activity, the immune cells that fight disease, for up to 7 days after a single session. The trees were not medicine. The unstructured, undemanding, unhurried time was the medicine. The ema inside the forest was what the body was absorbing. But you do not need a forest. The principle is simpler than that. It is older than any research study. It is this. Your brain needs intervals of non-doing the same way your muscles need rest between exertion. Not because rest is laziness, because rest is when the real work happens. Wabi-sabi is another Japanese concept that lives in the same philosophical neighborhood as ema. It is the acceptance of imperfection and impermanence, the chipped bowl that is more beautiful for its flaw, the moss growing over the stone lantern, the face that shows its age without apology. Wabi-sabi teaches that incompleteness is not a problem to solve. It is the natural state of everything worth caring about. And there is something in that idea that speaks directly to why you woke up this morning already behind. Because behind implies a race. Behind implies a finish line. Behind implies that there is some complete, optimized, perfectly arranged version of your life waiting at the end of the to-do list, and that if you could just move fast enough and do enough and fill every moment with productive action, you would eventually arrive there. But wabi-sabi says that destination does not exist. The incompleteness is not a detour. It is the path itself. The Japanese concept of Ikigai is perhaps the most discussed outside Japan. It translates roughly as the reason you get up in the morning. But what most Western interpretations miss is that Ikigai is not a purpose statement you craft in a journal. It is not a career pivot. It is not a brand. It is something far quieter. For most Japanese people, especially those studied in Okinawa, one of the world's recognized blue zones, where people live longest, Ikigai is found in small, daily, unremarkable things. The particular way morning light falls across the kitchen floor, the sound of a specific person's footsteps, the ritual of a craft practiced for decades. These are not grand meanings. They are the texture of ordinary moments noticed carefully. And you can only notice the texture of a moment if you are not racing through it. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the researcher who identified the state of flow, described it as a condition where challenge and skill are so perfectly matched that the self disappears. You stop being aware of yourself as a separate observer and become entirely absorbed in the doing. But flow, he noted, cannot be forced. It cannot be scheduled. It arrives when the conditions are right. And one of those conditions is almost always the absence of external pressure and internal noise. Ma creates the conditions for flow. Wabi-sabi removes the self-judgment that blocks it. Ikigai gives it direction. Together, these three ideas form something that no single English word contains, a way of moving through ordinary life that makes ordinary life feel like enough. Here is what that looks like in practice. It looks like drinking your coffee without looking at your phone. Not as a discipline, not as a rule, simply because the coffee is hot and it is morning, and that particular combination of warmth and quiet is worth the full 3 minutes it takes to experience it. It looks like walking somewhere with no audio input and no particular speed. Not because you are being mindful in any formal sense, but because your brain is running a process in the background that you will never see but will absolutely feel the results of later in the day. It looks like leaving the last page of the notebook blank, leaving 10 minutes at the end of the meeting without an agenda item, letting there be a pause in the conversation instead of rushing to fill it. It looks like being slightly, deliberately, contentedly unfinished. Your ancestors did not have algorithms designed to eliminate silence. They had fires that burned low in the evening. They had walks between places with nothing in their ears. They had the natural ma that a slower world simply contained. Your brain developed inside that world. It still expects that world, and when it does not find it, it substitutes anxiety for the absence. Neuroscientist Mary Helen Imordino Yang at the University of Southern California found that the default mode network, the network that Ma activates, is also the network responsible for empathy, moral reasoning, and the ability to understand other people as complex inner lives rather than just obstacles or tools. When the network is never given room to run, the research suggests, something in how we relate to other humans quietly degrades. This is not a small finding. It means that the pace at which most people are living is not just making them less creative or less rested. It is making them less human in the exact ways that matter most. You woke up this morning already behind. You felt the list pressing before you had opened your eyes. And somewhere in the gap between that first feeling and the first actual demand of the day, there was a second or two of pure, unscheduled nothing. Your brain, for just that moment, was doing exactly what it needed to do. You probably reached for your phone before it could finish. Tonight, when the day has stacked itself on top of you, and you have answered everything you needed to answer and done most of what needed doing, there will be another gap, a few minutes before sleep, a pause between one thing and whatever comes next. This time, stay in it. Your brain knows what to do with it. It has known for a very long time.